Thank you for coming to my channel, and I want to acknowledge that currently where I'm at, I am inhabiting lands from the Dakota and Anishinaabe people, and I just wanted to take some time and acknowledge that, and also remind you that you probably are on stolen land. If you're anywhere in the Americas, you're on stolen land, and definitely do that research about who were the original people on your land, and really take time and acknowledge that and what has happened and where we are now and how much further we need to go. Let's get back into the video. Hello, welcome to my booktube channel, Loc'D, and today we have a lot of books to discuss. So a couple things. I got on makeup. I hope it looks good on camera. It might look a little blotchy, whatever. Maybe I'll stay back here so it kind of looks even. But I thought I'll put on makeup today, and I'm really excited to talk to y'all about these books. There are a lot of books. Again, shout out to my Patreon for choosing this video for this week, and I imagine that this is going to be a lot of footage, but I'm going to try to summate each book as concisely and thoughtful as I can. Some of these books I haven't read in years, so you know, I might be really pulling at the heartstrings, my own heartstrings, trying to remember what the books are. I created this list in April, so from April until now those books haven't really been counted in. I actually forgot that I had this all set in April. This video is inspired by the video that Ashley from Bookish Realm did. In her video, she was reading this list of 100 books you should read before you die, and I thought that would be cool if I did it, but my own list, like a list that I generated. Also, the numbering of these books is they are not in any particular order. There's just books that I thought about. I thought it'd be really cool to break them down in genre. In the description box below, I will have each genre titled and a timestamp for your enjoyment if you want to skip around or come back to it. I try to put as many genres as I can. There is a section that I'm going to talk about which is fiction, and I have a couple genres in there, and I'll say that. So as you saw in the title, these are 100 books to read before you die. However, when I was counting it up on my tiny calculator, whatever that's at, it was a little bit over 100 books. So let's hope you're okay with that, and let's get into it. Sorry, before we get into nonfiction, I wanted to move over a little bit so that I can have room to put the, what is it? Come on, help me out. The book cover right here. I forgot it for some reason. I had to bring it back. I had to bring it back. So I'm gonna put the book covers here. Also, you may see me turning in this direction because I have my computer up. Also, I'm gonna try my best. I don't know if I'll get to it. I'll try my best to have all of the books I talk about today in a link, which is Bookshop. And if you buy any of the books through this link, which is Bookshop, I will get a small commission if you buy the books. So I think it'll be good to have all the books in one area. So click on the link below if that link is there. I'm hoping that it's there. So I'll work on that, even though today is Tuesday. So I'm planning on shooting and editing and captioning this video by Thursday. So hopefully everything is moving and rolling and going by Thursday. To step away from all of those interruptions, let's get into the list, because I know y'all ready and I'm ready. Number 1, we have Braiding Sweetgrass by Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. I know most of you have heard me rave to the top of my lungs about this book. Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer is a member of Potawatomi, and she wrote this book about how to take care of sweetgrass, what it means, and also she talks about indigenous botany all throughout the book. She talks about the 7 generations. She also talks about different indigenous ways of taking care of the land. One of my favorite parts of the book is how she discusses how anything from the earth are gifts and they should not be for sale. And it makes me think of where we are now and how we sell a lot of things from the earth. And it just put a lot of things in perspective for me. The next book is Hood Feminism by Makiki Kendall. You all have heard me rave about this as well. Please go and look throughout my channel to find this review of this book. And I really enjoyed this book because it looks at feminism in an intersectional way. It includes women who were victims or survivors of intimate partner violence, indigenous women, specifically the ones who were missing and murdered, Black women, queer women, trans women. It thinks of feminism as intersectional, and it actually talk about the women of the feminist movement that were forgotten. The Source of Self-Regard by Toni Morrison. Shout out to Chronicles of Noria for bringing this book to my attention. This is a collective piece of a lot of speeches, letters, and books, and also reflection that Toni Morrison had throughout her life. The next one is The Survivors Club, and I truly enjoyed reading this book. I read it in grad school a couple years ago, and the book just takes you through scenarios that people survived. It was like a wicked or just very odd way for someone to be injured and also survive it. The Body Keeps the Score is the next book, and this book talks about how trauma stays in the body, what happens to your body when you are experiencing trauma. The Gift of Therapy is the next book, and I really enjoyed this book because it really spoke to a therapist. And I think anyone out there who are thinking about becoming a therapist or a mental health professional at all, please let this be one of your first books before you start your practice, because it allows you to dive into the author's mind, and the author has decades of experience of therapy, and he talks about what happens to him in the room, what he wish have happened, and how therapy and providing people therapy has actually helped him in his life. The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, to me, is phenomenal, particularly the praising and the understanding of Black women experiences. And I'm saying experiences because I'm sure not all Black women can relate to this book, but I felt very seen and protected in this book. The next book is The Body Is Not an Apology, and I love this book as well because it talks about how your body is not an apology. One of my favorite parts about this book is trying to pay attention to the words that we tell young girls and how that can instill like fat phobia or body dysmorphia or different things in them because we are pointing or calling out parts about their body, and we're doing it incorrectly, we're doing it harmfully. It really calls for you to think in a reflective manner about the way in which you have received messages about your body and the way that you have given other people messages about your body. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee is one of the books that took me months to read. And it took me months to read because a lot of times when you hear about Indigenous folks, it's always thinking about them in the past. But when you are thinking about them in the past, you're also not really sure what you're thinking about. And I just want to pause and say Indigenous people are not of the past. They are current, they are here, they are thriving, they are resilient people. Just want to say that. But when you're reading or thinking about Indigenous folks, I can attest to this being in, I don't know, elementary and high school, middle school, and it was always thought of something in the past, and I never understood like what it meant until I read this book. This book gives you a deep dive historical analysis of how the United States has systematically tried and continues to try to further the erasure of Indigenous people. And I think if you're looking for that historical context, this is the book for you. The next book is Pluto Files by Neil deGrasse Tyson. This book had me laughing. It is very funny. While reading this book, I thought to myself, Some people are really upset that Pluto is no longer classified as a planet and have been demoted to a dwarf planet and demoted to something else recently. But the way in which Neil deGrasse talks about people writing him letters as if he was the one who purposely said, hey, Pluto is no longer a planet. He wasn't even the first one to say Pluto was no longer a planet, but people really latched on to him and sent him some very disturbing messages, but he took it all in humor, and I really enjoyed that about this book. The Color of Law really gave me insight into gerrymandering, color lines, districts, counties, the way things are set up, housing specifically. I just felt that this book was a wealth of knowledge. It is heavy on the research side, but very informative if you're trying to figure out, okay, how has the government been racist in regards to housing historically? Becoming by Michelle Obama was one of my favorite books a couple years ago. I read it right when it came out, and let me tell you, Michelle Obama has a gift for storytelling. I really felt that while reading her book. I also felt that Michelle Obama dealt with things that I was dealing with at the same age. When I read this book, I was about the same age Michelle Obama was when she decided not to pursue law anymore. And talking about how that stirred up emotions within herself, within her family, how she was like, dang, I don't know which way to go. I felt very similar at that time and still feel that way in a lot of ways. So I felt that the book made her more relatable to me than she was before. Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. We all know how I feel about this book. This book gives you in-depth scientific reasons of why you sleep and why you should sleep. I felt that every time I was reading a chapter, I would pass out and go to sleep because I was like, oh my God, I'm wasting prime sleep. Even though my insomnia has come back in a lot of ways, this book really helped me get on track. So usually when my insomnia comes, it has me in the chokehold for like 6 months or over a couple years. But since reading this book, if my insomnia, it usually lasts a couple weeks. One time it did last 2 months, but it's not nearly as long as when it did before I read this book. So to me, I feel like the book has helped me. Freakonomics. I was recommended this book while I was in Peace Corps Ukraine, and at first I was like, what is this? But while reading it, the stats in this book made it very attractive to me on understanding probability of things happening. And this book was heavy on that. Period Power was one of my favorite books to read for Asian read-along. I suggest it to almost anyone I know. There's just so much about menstruating that I didn't know historical context to, and this book gives you that. Ace by Angela Chen was so great because I felt that while reading this book, I was able to, I guess, make myself less ignorant as a regard to asexuality and thinking of it as a spectrum. I tend to think of a lot of things as a spectrum or stay in a gray area because I do recognize everything is not black and white, but this book definitely challenged me and made me confront my very black and white thinking of asexuality, sexual desire, and sexual attraction. So You Want to Talk About Race is one of my favorite books because it pretty much outlines what the title is. It was definitely also a memoir about the author talking about the discussions that they had about race with other people and how having a platform has backfired or affected them in their personal lives in regards to their identity and their safety and the safety of their children. It Didn't Start With You was also one of my favorite books because it talks about how trauma can be felt throughout your DNA 3 to 4 generations above you and 3 to 4 generations below you. So I think it's really, really important for you to read this book. If you are feeling something and you're like, wow, nothing happened to me, why am I freaking out about this one thing? And if you do the history and like explore throughout your family, maybe grandpa experienced X, but it got passed on to you. Maybe grandma experienced something, mom experienced something, someone experienced something that you are feeling in your body. In other words, was one of the most beautiful nonfiction memoir books. I put it in a nonfiction place, but it's also a memoir, and it was a beautiful account of how the author, Jhumpa Lahiri, talks about her love for the Italian language and what she did to hold on to that language. And as a person who really want to be a thriving polyglot out here in this world, reading this book was just everything I thought that I needed. Killers of the Flower Moon, the Osage Murders, and the Birth of the FBI. I read this book and did not read the back of it, but was recommended it from a friend, and I don't think if I read the back of it I would have been turned off. I think I still would have read it, but the detailed account of how the history in the United States continues to be atrocious to indigenous folks was real, was apparent in this book. The Witches. I truly love The Witches because it gives you a detailed account, nonfiction, detailed account of what people thought was witch, or what qualified as being magical or witch-like back in the day during the Salem witch trials. And the things that people thought that made other folks a witch still sit with me today. I'm like, huh? And also for the fact that no men, you heard it right, no men was accused as being a witch. It smells sexist to me. Also, Cleopatra by the same author, phenomenal. Phenomenal. I realized it was like a little blurry, so I had to fix that. Cleopatra by the same author. Y'all, giving, done gave, done receive. While reading this book, I said, Cleo, you were the baddest. The fact that our girl purposely got pregnant to save her life, like how do your pregnancies get timed so well while you are entertaining very rich and powerful men? My girl said, I'm saving myself and having they babies. Huh? Really, a queen, if I ever seen one. Although there are some things that's a little murky in her history, more than a little, but still, me thinking about the things that she did for survival, whew, those are tough and big decisions. Red Famine was one of the books that I felt that I had to read in Ukraine because of a lot of things. One of the reasons I felt like I had to read Red Famine while I was in Ukraine, because I didn't understand the history of Ukraine. I didn't understand why things were the way they were, and I also wanted to understand why most Ukrainians I encountered or interacted with treated me a different way because I'm foreigner and because I'm black. And while reading that book, a lot of things made a lot of sense to me, and it definitely helped me lend a compassion to Ukrainian people that wasn't there before. And it also made me think that a lot of Ukrainian history is quite similar to the history of Black Americans in America. The shock doctrine was a complete disgust. Like, the book was very informative, but the way in which people use capitalism to feed off of areas that have experienced floods or natural disasters or disasters at all, the way in which people weaponize capitalism was disgusting, and this book outlines it. There was a part that talks about Hurricane Katrina, and as a survivor, I felt very triggered and very pissed off. Memoirs. I Know Why the Caged Birds Sing. This probably is a book that's been on lots of people TBR lists, or lots of people have read it, but it is an account from childhood into teen years until adulthood about Maya Angelou's life. Really causes you to think more reflectively on who she was and what she did. My favorite book by Maya Angelou is Mom, Me, and Mom, and the reason why it's my favorite book of hers, and also one of my favorite memoirs, even in the list I'm about to say to you, is because she outlines the pain, the grief, and the joy of being the daughter of her mother, and what she hopes for other adopted daughters, which lands into the next book that she wrote called Letters to My Daughters. I won't put that up here, but that book and Mom, Me, and Mom went hand in hand. Wandering in Strange Lands. I felt that this book came to me at a very good time, and when I say that is because I've been working personally on trying to figure out my ancestry and how to go about doing that. And reading this book, you follow the author trying to talk to her elders, talk to her parents, and figure out the history and where her family is from. And then you go through the book on her actually going to visit these places and figure out, you know, if she can figure out any family history or find names, anything that can tie directly to her. Now, I realized that what the author did was so dope, super cool, and great. I also want to point out access. You know, it can be hard to get access to information when you are of slave ancestry like myself, and also like her. Some things were easily available to her, some things were not. That can also be hard for someone who's trying to trace back their ancestry if they have slave ancestry. And also having the money to travel around the US and try to figure out where you came from can also be daunting and emotionally draining. So I wanted to point that out as well. Make Me Wanna Holler is a memoir about a man who was in prison, and then he got out of prison, and he talked about his whole life and his involvement in different nefarious activities really how that made him who he is today. And I felt like that book really put me on the trajectory of wanting to read more authors who were Black. Undocumented Americans, I felt, was a heartfelt love story to America with hints of anger and grief. And I feel like this is a book that you have to read yourself, because in my opinion, I took a lot of different things from it. One of the big things I took is how people forget about those of us who are not citizens and what they have contributed to or throughout American history. One of the things that really stood out to me in the book, when the author talked about Mexican people who were instrumental in helping other people during 9/11. And the fact that I didn't even think about that, or that was not something that was on the news, really hit me hard, and also really had me thinking about who else am I discounting? Who else am I not thinking about? Situations like that, or other situations. Big Friendship. I feel that there are a lot of people who read this book in my circle. They either hated it or meh. To me, I felt seen in this story, mainly because I have a lot of deep relationships with white folks. And as a woman of color, I have felt a lot of the things that one of the authors have discussed. And I also have been like, do I want to be friends with this white person for them white peopling? And then I asked myself, but what does that mean? Or I feel like, but I've been friends with them for this amount of time and they've done this or done that for me, or I've done this and done that for them. We have history, and it's just like, it can be very difficult being a brown person and being in a long-term relationship, whether it's romantic, whether it's platonic, with a white person who have been socialized in America. All Boys Are in Blue is one of my favorite memoirs, and I feel like I keep saying one of my favorite, but this is 100 books that I think you should read. So I felt that All Boys Are in Blue was a beautiful testament of standing in your truth and speaking it even when it's harmful, even when it's hurtful, even when you feel like you could have done things a different way. This book, I felt, laid it all out, and we definitely got a good glimpse of who the author is. We Are Going to Need More Wine by Gabrielle Union was a surprise for me. A lot of times I read memoirs by actresses and actors, and the ones that I've read before this I felt didn't go into enough depth and didn't leave an impression on me. And I felt like this book did, specifically the humor, the pain, and really, we're gonna need more wine, because each chapter you're like, damn, she hit me, damn, she hit me. So I felt like the title really pulled things together. The Best We Could Do was also a very good book for me. I think it was the first graphic novel I ever read. Don't quote me on that, but I feel pretty strong about that. I think it was the first graphic novel I've ever read. The author tells this story about her parents and their migration from Vietnam to America, and it talks about it from their perspectives and what happened to them and who they were before they were married, who they were when they were married, and how it affected them raising children and how it affected their children raising children. And there is a huge underlining theme of grief throughout the book. Fantasy! Let's talk about the Immortal series by Michael Scott. Y'all know I loved this series. I really want to reread it. And the series have, like, I don't know, I'm just spitballing, 7 books. And my favorite book in the series is The Necromancer. And you're following this story of 2 twins who find out that they're magical and them literally trying to save the world. Each book is they're getting hit with another terrible thing or monster or just ghost. I really like the action that these books were given. And I don't know if I should count this as like a full series, but I just counted it as one. Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. Oh, how do you wrap that up in like such a short thing? Really spoke to my heart, I feel. I felt that I didn't really understand Brujas or Brew-X culture until I dived deeper into this book. And the author is phenomenal, and for the life of me right now I can't think of the 2 main characters' names, but their relationship, the bickering, the back and forth thing, one of the main characters' relationship with his cousin was just so beautifully thought out and written very well. I truly enjoyed this book. Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. Whew. Y'all, it took me so long to say Okorafor and not Okorafora because I kept thinking that there is this magical A at the end, and that is not true. That is fake news. That is not true. Moving forward, I truly loved this book because I kept thinking to myself, JKR could never write this way, could never add cultural pieces that Nettie added, could never really, you know, speak about spirits and the way they move and the way that Nettie did. Nettie gave us everything that we needed in this book. Dr. Okorafor gave us everything that we needed in this book. And I'm so happy that it was a series. And I'm also really happy that the third book is coming out, which I feel like I need to reread the first two, Akata Witch and Akata Warrior, because it's been some years. It's been at least about 2 years. I didn't even know we were going to get a third one, but I'm here for it. I am here for it. So this follows the story of a young black girl who is albino, and she finds out that she has magic, and she is trying to go to this magic school and also hide it from her parents. She also has this gift with fire. It just gets deeper and deeper. She does have this complex of like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do that, and thank gosh she have friends who kind of will her back in, but also engage in the fuckery. But I am here for all of it. Conjured Women was so good to me, mainly because I was here for Rue. The character Rue gave us dynamic, gave us complexity, and also gave us forgiveness. Because I felt like there were characters in this book that she didn't have to forgive. She could have straight up been like, but she went ahead and did it anyway. And I was like, you are really someone that we should cherish, because let me tell you, I would still be pissed. The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. If you're not an N.K. Jemisin fan, exit left. No, I'm just kidding. Loved, love this book. The big parts about this book that still blows my mind is, how do you wake up, Nora, you know, first name basis, as Brit from Brit Writerly would say. How do you wake up, Nora, and be like, you know what? I'm gonna turn each borough in New York into a person, then make it as if they are fighting a white lady who is a representative of white supremacy. Then the irony of calling the character White Lady, then putting in the book that the white lady has spies that are everywhere, which making me think the government is always watching. Siri can definitely attest to that. So while you're reading this book, you're like, we live in this. It's just, and then making the boroughs representatives of people who are actually living and thriving today. You know, Nora, we gotta have a conversation, because the way you put this together, amen. Cinderella is dead. I'll say it again. Why did we have to wait to page 272 for a kiss? We waited, but I think that we waited in a good way. I also felt like this was a true spin on, you know, that princess movie. What was it? Cinderella. I'm like, what am I talking about? Cinderella. Because I didn't see half of that happening. I definitely didn't see what happened to Cinderella happening. I was going with everybody else thinking something else. But then you find out like, oh wait, what's going on? So I'm trying to say this without spoiling, but this was just such a good retelling. Every time I'm reading a retelling, I want to be like, is this really gonna be a retelling? But I love a retelling that just keeps the name, but it's really a different story. And that is what this book gave you. Ray Barrier. Whew! Y'all know I did a full review on this. Loved Ray Barrier. Do I still have some fighting words for the lady, a character in the book? Yes. Do I still want to throw those hands with her in a back alley? Absolutely. But do I also understand the complexity of that character? What made her the way that she was and why she turned out the way that she did? Yes. Am I ready for a Redemptor, the second book in the series? Yesterday. The fact that Jordan, the author, haven't sent me the book? Blasphemy. Do I feel like it's a personal attack? Yes. The 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. Recently, I've been seeing people reading the series, starting off with the first book. And they are like 60, 100 pages in, and they're like, don't want it. It's confusing. Let's be real. N.K. Jemisin writing is superior to anybody I ever read. Oftentimes, I'm looking for the dictionary. I'm trying to figure out where it's at. But once you get past that first book, everything else is golden, because you're getting such a complex world that she's building that you have to go in for the meat. Go in for the meat. You will be rewarded. You will be rewarded. The Night Tiger. I'm going to read to y'all what I wrote for The Night Tiger on Goodreads, because a little part of me is trying not to die of laughter. The symmetry and connectedness in the book were uncanny. The author has a way of lining up suspected suspects as to who was the Night Tiger, but threw in a plot twist to confuse you on the way. Confusion in a good way nonetheless. Although the love story in the book kept me saying, what in the ancestral is this? It still left me wanting more. There was an unlikely match. The character development was some of the best I've seen all year. If you are looking for a book with mystery, hints of thriller, and with diverse characters, please check this book out. Oftentimes I've read books and asked myself, why are most of the characters white? Where are the Asian characters, Native American characters, Aboriginal characters, Latinx characters, Black characters, African characters? This book helps fill in that void for me. I'm just trying to figure out, why would I put ancestral? Is that a word on the internet? I've done worse. Moving on. Now we're going to talk about mystery, thriller, and horror. Ghosts of Harvard. The way this author said, look, I'm going to let y'all know about the tragedy that has happened on the campus, Harvard, but make it thriller. Genius. I just felt like the whole time I was reading the book, I first thought, maybe the main character is having some type of mental health disorder, or maybe they're having a psychotic episode. I was thinking all type of different formulas of what I was thinking that was happening. And then while reading the book, some of the things that I thought was happening was actually happening, but some of the things were presented in a way to make you think one thing, but really got you to understand the history of Harvard as a university overall. And there's just a lot of things that I did not know about Harvard, and that the author even tells you at the end of the book. So this was a very good spin on, and I don't want to even say good spin, it was an interesting spin on using history as a thriller point. I also didn't realize how much I like books that have a setting that is in a school, but also thriller or mystery or horror tied to it. This book made me realize that I like that element, which also helped me with another book, the Truly Devious series that I truly liked by Maureen Johnson, have heavy school vibes. Truly Devious follows this young girl who got accepted to this school. Her family can't really afford for her to go to this school, but she gets into the school with a scholarship, and it's a couple books in the Truly Devious series, and she's trying to solve a crime. And the book takes you through all the different things that could have happened with this crime. Big Little Lies. Y'all know that I love Big Little Lies. Also love the TV show. Leanne Moriarty is one of my favorite writers, specifically thriller writers, because I feel that they are just neatly wrapped up. Sometimes you just want something that's neatly wrapped up with a twist. And I feel like she delivers and she understands the assignment in that regard. Big Little Lies talks about this group of women who are in a, I don't know, rich neighborhood, and somebody dies. And don't want to say who dies because they'll be spoiling it. The person dies and they gotta stick together and try to, you know, make sure they pick up the pieces. But also one of the characters have experienced a pretty big sexual trauma and came to this town to get away from where the trauma occurred. But neither does she knows it may have followed her. Midnight Rain. Whew. Y'all know I love Midnight Rain. Midnight Rain is also classified as a paranormal romance. I'm sorry y'all for the focus. I don't know why the focus is like getting all messed up today, but it got messed up. I read this book, again, I'm saying it again to y'all, when I was 18 years old, and this follows the story of a young woman who's a Southern belle, and she meets this man. They fall in love, they have a family, and she finds out that he's abusive, mentally, physically, verbally, in all the different ways that abuse can present itself. So then one day he gets upset with her, come to her school, I believe, shoots her in the leg, or shoots her in the knee or something, and she's having, like, you know, issues with this. Something else happens to him, and she moves to go into another place and thinks that she got away from him. But did she? I don't know. You have to read the book and find out. But let me tell you, things go down. Keep an eye on her tea. That's all I'm going to say. Keep an eye on her tea. When you read it, come back and talk to me, because I want everybody in the tri-state area in the world to read this book. Because when I tell you the twist that happens in this book, I haven't seen that in a very long time. Even to this day, I felt like every time you shut up the ball to get a home run, the author came in with another Salt Bay of thriller action. And I was like, the math ain't mathin', but it math in this book. It math in this book. So what I'm saying to you is read the book. Tell me about the tea. Literally sipping tea. And let's get into it. The next book is Haunted Nights. It is a horror anthology. Y'all. Listen. There is body snatchers. There is revenge on Nazi sympathizers. There is revenge on Nazis themselves. There is ghosts who are hunting towns. There is weird things that's showing up in places. There also is a story written by Stephen Graham Jones. There's a lot going on in these stories. Scare the bejesus out of me. You're welcome. Bringing us back to the Only Good Indians. I may or may not occasionally converse with him on the Twitter. Just saying. Like, brag. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. What I will say is the Only Good Indians follows the story of this animal. I'm trying to remember what the animal was. It an elk? Yeah, I think it was an elk. An elk who is getting revenge on people who killed the elk. And the way in which the elk is doing it. Stephen Graham Jones take creepy to a whole nother level. You reading this book, And you are seeing how this elk is systematically taking people out. And the way the elk did it and attempted to do it. I'm just saying, don't wash your dishes with your back turned. Okay? You heard it here. Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This book was very hard to read, and this is a thriller big T. I would even say like near horror. And this book follows women or young girls who have been taken and used for sexual purposes, abused, or got mixed up in human trafficking. And the book don't explicitly say this, but this is one of the author notes about the book. And you're following this girl trying to figure out what happened to her sister. No one knows what happened to her sister. Her sister hasn't been found. It's this whole thing, and you watch how she tries to find out what happened to her sister and also putting herself in danger. You're reading this in the totality of her life. Like, it starts when she was younger, and then she gets older, and then she gets married. It's like the whole thing you watch and you see. Allegedly is one of those books that got you into the last page. Into the last sentence. You're reading this story about this young girl who got caught up in being accused of killing this kid, this baby. So I want you to be, you know, aware of that when you're reading. And while you're reading it, you're thinking like, oh my God, like maybe something was wrong, maybe something happened. And then you get to the last page and you're like, I know this author did not take me through this emotional turmoil, and I got here and find out what I was thinking was not true. And I know I say that a lot, but I love books like that. That I'm thinking one thing and I'm convinced that it's this, and I get to the end and I find out that I ain't. It happens to the best of us. Hey y'all, I had to take a little break because my camera said, not today sis. So I'm doing this in sections to make it one full video. The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. I really enjoy reading books by this author. If you go on my Goodreads, you'll see how many books I've read from this author. I feel that this author does a really good job on setting up what could be likable characters to commit a crime, and you find out at the end that the people who you think are helpless, or they are woe is me, or they are seen as weak, are really not as weak as you think they are. I felt that a lot about Mrs. Parrish in this book, mainly because you follow the story of this woman being very jealous of Mrs. Parrish and being jealous of everything that she has, but she doesn't know that what's look greener on the other side isn't always greener. So you find her trying to take over Mrs. Parrish's life, but then find out the secrets that is in Mrs. Parrish's household. The Silent Patient was one of my favorite books of last year. I think it was May to be exact. And I even talked about it in my May wrap-up if you go to my wrap-ups in my channel. And I truly love this book because of the psychological aspect to it. And as a therapist, I found it very intriguing. You are getting two different perspectives while reading this book. And you're trying to figure out what is going on with the silent patient. What do they know and what they do not know, and what has made them silent. But then you find out that, you know, some characters are really playing the long game and really are trying to convince you that they are helpless and they are not. Or they're trying to convince you that they're helpless, but they really have some tricks up their sleeve. Devil in a Blue Dress is one of my favorite books. It follows the main character, Easy Rowlands, and him trying to find this woman in a blue dress. And he has been tasked with this assignment by a person that he shouldn't really trust. And while he's trying to find this woman in a blue dress, he's also running into a lot of issues. And then he calls on his best friend Mouse to kind of help him get out of those issues. So it is definitely kind of like a urban mystery, I guess, if we're gonna put a title on it. It is very much set in like the 60s black culture. We're talking bootleggers or whatever they're called, and I really enjoyed this book. And I'm also trying to read the rest of the books in this series. I think it's about 17 books, so I'll let y'all know how far I get there. My Sister the Serial Killer. Y'all, when I tell you that this book took me through it, I kept thinking, listen, if my sister was out here killing all these men, would I be ride or die like the character in this book? This character put up a lot. She put up with a lot that her sister was throwing at her. And her sister has to be one of the most selfish human beings I ever met. While you're reading this book, you're thinking to yourself, wow, there's going to be more, there's going to be more. My only critique about this book is how short it was. I really wanted more. I wanted to know more about the sister who wasn't the serial killer and what she was gonna do. I actually wanted her to turn into the serial killer. It's just a lot, but I truly enjoyed this book. So you know, we're gonna talk about fiction. So in this next section, I'm gonna try to specify what kind of fiction it is, just so y'all know where we're at. First, we're going to talk about Wild Seed by Octavia E. Butler. I'm going to actually put up my review with Emma Ray and Power. Feel free to watch that video. But in a quick synopsis, Wild Seed follows a character named Doro and Nyanwu, and both of them are pretty much trying to figure out how to exist in the new world with magical powers. Doro is a more powerful being than Anyanwu, and he sensed her, or have the ability to sense people who have special abilities. And it takes you to the story of her trying to find her voice while being overshadowed by such a dominant presence, and what happens to her and her descendants. Elf by, or Lef, I always say this word wrong, by Paulo Coelho is one of my favorite books because I found it to be very spiritual in nature, and you're following the character of two characters. One is an older gentleman who is married, who is going on this quest throughout Russia, and he meets this woman who says that, you know, they're meant to be, or they have some type of connection. And you watch him explore it, you watch her explore it. She's kind of falling apart. He is trying to be gentle with her, but also admit that he may have met her in a previous life, and he's trying to explore that while also trying to be true to his marriage. The Spy, also by Paulo Coelho, I loved a lot. I actually read The Spy in Ukrainian a little bit on my channel when I first started, and it follows the story of Mata Hari, and like, how could you not like that? The Deep by River Solomon is also a book that I did a thorough review with a couple people a couple months ago, and I'll try to put that also in the cards or something so that you can see that long review. And it follows the story of these people called Wajanru, and they are the descendants of slaves who were thrown off the boat during the transatlantic slave route, and they went deep in the sea and pretty much came like mermaids. And it talks about their culture, how are they keeping those stories of what happened to them, and it's pretty much focused on this person who is a historian who keeps all of this information and tasked with being the gatekeeper of everything that happened to everyone, so that everyone else don't have the burden of having all those memories and experiences. Namesake by Jhumpa Lahara is contemporary, and I truly loved the way that the main character name really gave them kind of identity crisis, but not, I don't want to say I love that this person had an identity crisis. I didn't love that. I really loved the way in which the author wrote their identity crisis and taking you through what their name, their specific name, meant to the character and the grief that it caused them, because the character was really not trying to associate with their roots and really trying to embody being a white person, and really struggled with that even though they were not a white person. Dear Martin really took me on an emotional journey, and that book was written by Nick Stone, and I think that it took me on an emotional turn because I never thought of a book being written as saying like, Dear Martin, this is what happened. Dear Martin, that is what happened. Dear Martin, this is how I feel. I'm trying to live up to you, but I can't. This is what's happening in real life to Black people. It's just something I never thought about, and it's one of those books that just sits with me a lot. Freshwater by Kweki Imizi. Loved this book. I felt that this book gave me a non-Western view on the way in which spirits can inhabit a body, and what does that mean for the person who has that spirit inside of them. Queenie, I know Queenie is a hot mess. I know people don't like it. I know people do like this book. For me, it's the fact that our girl was constantly falling apart over 300 some pages. I was really here for it because I felt that it really gave me an unlikable character. I enjoy unlikable characters, and I felt that there was a lot to learn from Queenie, because Queenie was just making decisions very hard for herself, and things were happening to her that was out of her control, and the way that she handled things may have not been the best, and the way that she spoke to people also may have not been the best. But I thought that that was a story that needed to be told, even in its ugliness. The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. Most of y'all know how I feel about this book if you followed me on Instagram for a long time. I'm still ready to give Stella that 1, 2, 3 combo. I'm still about that life with Stella. I'm still following the motto of on site means on site. This follows the story of two twins who are in this town, and in this town is primarily Black people who look white, and they have different expectations and different cultural norms that is set in place so that you are perceived as a white person. However, the twins learn very early on that it doesn't matter how light your skin is, you are still perceived as to the white folks in this town, and their father was murdered. So they decided that they want to change their lives. So both of them go two separate ways, and you watch one who exists as a Black person and you watch one exist as a white person, and you follow the story of both of their lives, and you will find yourself very, very frustrated with Stella. You'll find yourself frustrated with the other twin too, but Stella is who you'll find yourself most frustrated with. I even remember her name. And I'm terrible at remembering characters' name, but I remember her name. The Secret Lives of Church Ladies was just giving me a couple stories that was giving you insight to women who be at the church or women who follow the faith. And I won't lie to you, some of them were funny. So definitely get into this book if you're looking into something like that. Some parts wasn't funny. The Bluest Eye, I did a in-depth review about that. I'll also put that up, but definitely get into The Bluest Eye. It's also a Black classic, and I don't think you will regret it. The Lesson by Cadwell Turnbull. Where do I start? The Lesson was giving me science fiction that I felt was inspired by Octavia E. Butler when I read the book. I also felt that the Ina, which are the people who are the superior race in this book, were just so aggressively patient that had you on your toes while reading the whole book. And the humans that had to interact with them were the opposite of that. And I don't want to say like they were, you know, trying to kill them all the time. There were humans who were trying to kill them, and there were Ina people who were trying to kill them. But looking at the interactions of the humans and how they're connected, and also the Ina and how they're connected, was very interesting to read. The Passing by Nina Larson, whoo, it took me there. This follows the story of two women, again, similar to The Vanishing Act, who are white passing, and you follow the story of one who is existing as a black person in like the 50s, and one who is passing as white. And the whole time I felt like I was more scared for the one who was passing in white, because to behave like that or to choose to be white in the 50s, I just imagine it being very dangerous. I also will put up a video of me talking about that book with my grandma. I read this book called The Map of Salt and Stars a very long time ago, and I found the physical book very beautiful. Watching how the characters immigrated to country to country to country, and what that looked like for them, was heartbreaking and also very real. Like, I felt that even though this was a fiction book, it was a historical fiction. There are so many people who have experienced what has happened in this manga and graphic novels. The first manga I want to talk about is Monster. Y'all know I love Monster. Come on, y'all know I love Monster. So Monster follows the story of this doctor who is engaged to the head of the surgery department daughter, and she is really out for the coin. She only care about the coin and status, and if you ain't got the coin and the status, she ain't messing with you. And he is just a goody two-shoe who just trying to do good. But there is somebody out there who is murdering and killing people, and he feels like he has to be the one to figure it out. So it follows him trying to figure it out, and him also trying to protect one of his patients. And it's so many different volumes, I think 6 volumes of this manga. I'm already on volume 3, and I'm ready for the rest. I'm ready. Go With the Flow is a graphic novel that I gave my niece, and I truly loved it. It is a story that talks about periods and how young people should handle periods, I guess I would say, and also talks about period tax. And I thought it was like a good book to give to young girls who are just going through their periods, and I gave it to my niece. The Prince and the Dressmaker really makes me feel good, and good in a way that it doesn't matter what status you have, what position you hold, be yourself. The Prince clearly has a position to uphold, but he likes wearing dresses, and he had to find someone to make him dresses. And watching him convince her to make him dresses and trying to convince her to do other things with him, and watching how that story developed, I just thought this was such a cute graphic novel, and I loved it. Bingo Love put me in tears, because this is a story of how it don't matter how old you are, live your truth. It follows the story of 2 women who are in the middle of their lives. They have children, they have husbands, but they know that they like women. And they had a little thang when they were younger, but then was told that it was a sin, or it was this, or it was that. So they never, you know, came together. But then when they got older, they saw each other after they have not seen each other for many years, and decided, what the hell? Let me just go ahead and live my life. So it follows the story of that, and then until their old age. And oh my god, it was so cute and so sad. Loved it. Snapdragon is a story about how an annoying kid can win your heart. And I don't even know any other way to say that. Snapdragon is the character's name, and she's out here just really living her life. There are also some queer elements of this story, and Snapdragon finds this person who has this very peculiar job of taxidermy, if you will, but also witchy powers, and try to help Snapdragon with that. And you just follow the story of figuring out that the person who Snapdragon is now hanging out with, the taxidermy person, this person is connected to Snapdragon in ways that Snapdragon and her mother is not aware of. But her mom is really the star of the book. Sleepless Volume 1 and 2 is just a beautiful, sad love story of how duty can really mess with love and your faith and the path in which you take in life. Romance, we all know that I don't read a lot of romance, so I don't have a lot of books in this section. The first one we're going to talk about is Redeeming Love. It's one of the first romance I've ever read, and it follows one of the biblical stories. And I know I don't usually talk about biblical stories, but this biblical story I felt was really, really good to read at the time. I'll be interested to reread it and see if it still holds. But I know at the time that I read it, I really, really enjoyed it. And it follows the story of this guy who was told by God that he has to take care of this person who was a prostitute, this woman. And he's like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And God's like, you got to do it. You have to do it. This is what you're called for. And then it kind of follows, release me some tension. Listen, I don't know how you describe this without talking about, you know what I mean? And how does one describe? This is a story about two young black people. The woman calls the man tension, and she's trying to release the tension in a post-coital manner. Next, that inevitable Victorian thing. I really, really enjoyed this book because it made me realize that I like polyamorous relationships in books. This follows the story of this girl who is a royalty of some kind, if memory is serving me right, and she is falling for a young girl and a guy, and she is just trying to figure out how to navigate that, and they both are going for her and being like, hey, it's you that I want, and she's just really trying to figure that out. So you follow her make hard decisions and what she's gonna do with them both, and what does that mean, or if she's gonna choose one or choose them both or choose none of them. The next romance, or the last one on my list, is Sha in the Alexandria House. She has a series and it's like Sha, Set, Ja. Listen, Sha is my favorite. It's a little novella. It's giving. It done gave, I done receive. Sha is the kind of dude that I would be like, okay. I don't know more what to say without getting, like, I don't know, blushing on camera. How do people talk about romance? My God. How do they do it? Milk and Honey. Whew. Did I love it? Yes. Was it traumatizing? Yes. There are some trigger warnings all through this book, and I would implore you to go online and figure out what those are. But this is definitely talking about like family abuse, physical abuse, whether it's from other people or intimate partner violence, and how you heal and come back from that. And that is what I really loved about this book. Black Girl Call Home, and I just felt like each book was a testament to a black girl's resilience, or speaking to a multitude of black girls' experiences. Now we're going to talk about historical fiction. The Underground Railroad is one of those books that I don't think I can ever forget. Sorry if it was blurry. There was a part about birthdays and people not being able to celebrate their birthdays, and it definitely hit me hard. And most of this book is a slave narrative, and I remember thinking like, wow, all these birthdays that I didn't care about, because I don't usually put a lot of emphasis on my birthday. So the fact that I was not celebrating my birthday, I felt like I was personally letting down my ancestors. It was this whole thing I had to talk to my dad about. But now I have a different understanding of it now. But at the time, this book really changed me in that regard. The Island of Sea Women is one of those books that's written by one of my favorite historical fiction writers. And you follow the story of these women who have a job of diving deep, deep, deep into the sea to retrieve abalone shells, and what they do, and if they get injured. It's the whole culture around it, and the research that this author does to really bring historical fiction to life is always done so well. And she has a gift of giving you dual perspectives while reading the book, whether it's from another character or multiple characters or the narrator in the book. She does such a good job with it. The Water Dancer I truly enjoyed, which is another slave narrative, and also has something to do with the Underground Railroad. And what I found most memorable about this book is the part with Harriet Tubman, and I felt like I was in the room with everyone. I thought this book was written very well, and I didn't know that Ta-Nehisi Coates could write something like this. And I'm not saying that like, oh, I didn't know he can write this. I just didn't know that he had this skill set, and I am ready for more. Shanghai Girls is also a book by Lisa C, and it follows the story of two girls who is, I don't want to say they're sisters, they are friends, and they're trying to make the journey from where they live to America because something very awful has happened, and it has happened to the country in which they live in and also the town in which they live in. I also want to say that there are some trigger warnings as well of sexual assault in this book, and you follow the story of both of these girls trying to figure out their lives and also protect each other, and what it has cost them to protect each other and what it hasn't cost them to protect each other. Homegoing by Yagazi was a work of art. I just had to say it because it follows the story of two sisters, and these sisters are in Ghana and doing the slave route and slave trade. They get split, and each chapter is following a descendant of one of those sisters. One of the sister descendants stays in Ghana, the other one eventually get migrated to America, and then you just see what happens to all of those descendants. The Nightingale, I thought, was a beautiful work of art as well, because you follow the story of this woman who is risking her life to pass information and risking the life of other people to pass information. Let's go with children and teens. The Giving Tree is a book that was recommended to me to read a while ago, and I thought, what is this going to be about? Most of you have already read The Giving Tree and in various different languages, so I won't go into depth about it, but I definitely thought it was one of those books that I enjoy reading. I've read it a couple times, and I also can't wait to read it to my niece. I Am Enough is also a children's book, and I kept thinking to myself, this would be an awesome book to share with the little tiny babies who are coming in my family, because I think a lot of times growing up brown, you don't think that you're enough because the world is telling you something different than what your parents are telling you. And I think this book is a constant visual reminder of that, a reminder that you are enough. Charlotte Webb, I felt bamboozled. I felt that everyone lied to me, because the way I cried at the end, and y'all know what happened at the end. I won't out you, my cousins. Y'all knew what happened at the end and didn't warn your girl. So I'm holding my pillow at night crying over a spider. The Little Prince. I really liked this one. I really did. I felt that it talked about a lot of things that is happening in the world and injustices, but like put in a little bite-sized children teen book. Amari and the Night Brothers is middle grade, and y'all know that I loved that book. Follows this young girl named Amari. She get accepted into this school of magic because she's trying to find out what happened to her brothers, and what happened to her brothers may have to do with the Night Brothers. So she is trying to figure out who she can trust and what she can use to free her brother. Alana the First and all of the books that follows I really liked. I thought that, again, since this book was written in the 80s, or the books was written in the 80s, it was ahead of its time, and it challenged gender norms for young girls. There are some things that are very binary throughout the book, but I felt that overall it was a good book. It was a good book series. I really enjoyed The Marrow Thieves, and watching everything unfold in a dystopian context as it relates to the indigenous folks who identity were being torn and stripped and repackaged. I thought that it was a very interesting science fiction book that appeared to be dystopian but held a lot of truth to current day. The last section of the books is short stories. Let's get into it. Skinfolk by Nalo Hopkinson. Prime. Why? There were so many stories that Nalo wrote that came from a Caribbean mindset or Caribbean mindsets that I truly appreciated. There were some stories in this book that end up being full books that I can't wait to get into, and I really just enjoyed how there were stories related to being queer, different household structures, parenting. There were just so many different stories, and I found that it was a truly rich short story novel. Dear Black Girls is a book that I use in my practice, and I swear by it. It has lots and lots and lots of stories of Black women writing to other Black women in a dear format, and it's like, dear mixed girl, dear Black girl, dear Black trans girl, dear Black queer girl, dear Black immigrant girl. Like, it's just so many different letters written by Black women to Black women or Black girls. How Long to Black Future Month is a collection of short stories by N.K. Jemisin, and I truly enjoyed this as well. There were some stories that I was like, I don't know if I like that much, but there were some stories that I truly enjoyed and that I wanted to get into. And I also did a review with this book as well, and I'll try to put that in the cards as well. But I will say one of my favorite stories of this book is The City We Became. It was a story inside of this short story, and now it's a series that she's writing, and the first book is The City We Became. And another one was about this chef who would make this food and talk about this food in a very creepy manner. I really enjoyed that too. And I love the last story of the book that had elements of New Orleans and Katrina mixed all in it. coming back to Letters to My Daughter. I really like that book because Maya Angelou is writing letters or saying things that she would say to primarily famous Black women of how she has cared for them and how she wished to care for them as a mother figure. Black Noir, you heard me talk about it 1,000 times, but it is a collection on a 19th century crime and mystery by Black authors. I'll put the card up here or maybe in the description box of my review of that book. Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde I found was phenomenal. The way in which she talks about being angry and how you should sit in that and what it's like being a mother of a Black son. I just found this book to be filled with lifelong antidotes. And I feel like everyone should read the last book I'm going to talk about, which is Mules and Men by Zora Neale Hurston. And if you're looking for someone to give you a full in-depth review, that will be Britt from Britt Riley. But I truly love this book, mainly because a lot of the words that were used are words that are not easily accessible or commonly spoken amongst Black people today, and the way in which the stories use humor in order to explain them felt really relatable, and it felt like I was talking to my ancestors or my grandma and her siblings or their mother and their mother's siblings. It felt very comfortable to me. I don't know if that makes sense at all. Well, thank you so much for watching this long video as I talked about 100 books that you should read before you die. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to comment. I want to know what you read, what you didn't read, what you plan to read. And if you have nothing to say, just put a little cute emoji in the comment section so I know that you're watching. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye!